The Arab Spring was turning to winter. It was late 2011, and Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's dictator, had been captured and killed. Gunshots still rang out, but now they were being directed skywards in jubilation rather than maim or kill. During the revolution, many of those who opened fire on Gaddafi's forces had no military experience. Most had never even held a gun before, let alone engaged in bloody combat with a well-equipped modern army. And yet all these civilians turned fighters risked life and limb in the fight, and many were killed. What motivated their acts of self-sacrifice? This is a question I had pondered ever since I living in Papua New Guinea, and learning about the daring raids conducted by tribal warriors in the days before colonization and the emergence of Ch3-0. What I had been lacking was an opportunity to study extreme self-sacrifice directly. Then the Arab Spring arrived, and much of the North Africa and the Middle East was convulsed in civil war. One of my students, Brian McQueen, has spent most of the Libyan revolution in Misrata, a city under siege for many months, and the evidence he had been amassing was extraordinarily detailed and insightful. After a great deal of paperwork and string pulling, I managed to get a one-way ticket from the kiosk at Istanbul airport that will finally enable me to join him. Kiosk. As I stepped onto the tarmac, tarmac. Amid the swarm of passengers and livestock, I noticed that the terminal building was peppered with bullet holes. Okay. And the leaves of palm trees were torn to threads. My fellow passengers were climbing over one another to claim their luggage. McQueen retrieved me from the scrum and led me to his car. Scrum. From the scrum, a situation in which a group of people push each other to get a place or obtain something. I noticed a hole in the passenger door and picked up a dead shell from beside my feet as we drove away. McQueen avoided caffeine, knowing he had a tendency to talk too fast. Caffeine. As he bustled me into his car, speaking non-stop, I surmised that he had drunk several cups of coffee that morning. He had arranged a meeting with Salim Juha, a former colonel in Gaddafi's army who defected on the first day of the revolution. The effect. To leave the country political party. It was the perfect way to get our work started, McQueen told me enthusiastically. His voice grew distant as I took in fire-damaged buildings and endless rows of burned-out tanks. After collecting our translator, Muhammad, from a street corner, we proceed to a large mansion with bollards at the gate. Bollards. McQueen spoke briefly to the guards, each strapped up with an ammo belt and carrying an automatic weapon. They hauled their roadblocks to one side as we drove through the perimeter wall. McQueen turned to me. Mr. Ch3-0 is very powerful, he said. Please don't insult him or we are both in a lot of trouble. Please don't insult him. The mansion was once an oil investment corporation, but now served as a base for Misrata's revolutionary forces. Young men with rifles were sprawled on sofas. Sprawl. Sofa. Smoking, occasionally laughing loudly. As the three of us passed, they fell silent, following us with their eyes. Follow somebody with his eyes. Okay. We found Mr. Ch3-0 in the boardroom, seated at a long table, capable of accommodating perhaps 20 people comfortably. To his left and right were leaders of revolutionary brigades, wreathed in cigarette smoke. Wreathed in cigarette smoke. Be wreathed. Wreathed in cigarette smoke. McQueen, Muhammad, and I were shown to our seats at the table on the opposite side. Mr. Ch3-0 started fixedly at me and delivered a formal speech in Arabic. We would like to thank you for sending us your son, Brian, Muhammad translated. McQueen was not my son. He was my doctoral student there, and there was only a few years between us in age. But I decided it was the best not to argue. In any case, I told myself, keen psychology was one of the things we are here to study. Before I could make many notes, however, Mr. Ch3-0's speech was over, and it was my turn. I hastily mumbled something about my gratitude for the hospitality shown to my son, and then asked if he and his colleagues will be kind enough to answer a few questions of anthropological interest. Mr. Ch3-0's stare intensified. First, he said, I have a question for you. When news broke around the world about the revolution in Libya, had you ever heard of Misrata? It felt like a test. I recalled that McQueen said about not annoying him. Then I remember one of my most distinguished predecessors as head of the anthropology department in Oxford. It was none other than Sir Edward Evans Pritchard, the anthropologist we encountered in the last chapter, with an interest in witchcraft beliefs among the Azand. During the Second World War, Evans Pritchard, as he was known to his colleagues, served as an officer for British military intelligence in Libya, and via his voluminous writings I had learned about the war hero in Misrata. That man, it turned out, was Mr. Juha's grandfather. The atmosphere brightened a little upon this discovery. Evans Pritchard, E.P. Mr. Juha allowed me to explain more fully the purpose of my visit and the question I wanted to ask him. I told him I was here because I wanted to know what motivated so many ordinary civilians to take up arms in the popular uprising in which death was far likelier than victory. I pointed out that the vast majority of Libyans who joined the insurgency in 2011 had no military training or preparation. What gave them the hope they could overthrow a state-of-the-art, well-equipped army, a state-of-the-art. Mr. Juha began his answer with a comparison. Comparison to his time in Gaddafi's army. When he had been a military colonel, he explained, it had taken him 3 months to train new recruits to use a weapon. But the people he had trained here in Misrata could be taught in 3 hours. They learned not only how to use a gun, but also how to fix it when it broke and how to modify it to suit new situations. They had to figure it out for themselves because there were no maintenance depots. People used their initiative because their focus was on winning, not on earning a salary. This motivation made all the difference. The secret of revolutionary success, Mr. Juha told me, was the will to fight. When the revolution began, there was no compulsion to join. We just called our friends and asked them, do you want to die or not? If you want to die, come with us. If not, go home and stay out of harm's way. This is not the time for reflection or discussion. He who wishes to die can accomplish anything. He who does not should live in peace. As a result of this winnowing process, winnow. The winnowing process, he told me, any one of the civilian-trained fighters in Misrata's Kataib battalions was worth 10 times a professional soldier in any conventional army. Although some of the details of the Libyan context were unique, the willingness of revolutionaries to fight and die for one another was not. For thousands of years, warriors had been prepared to commit acts of astonishing self-sacrifice on the battlefields that were not easy to explain from an evolutionary perspective. After all, there is no surer way to end one's lineage. One's lineage than to die before reproducing. From an evolutionary standpoint, organisms should normally prioritize their own survival over that of other individuals. But there are at least some scenarios in which it would make sense for self-sacrificial behavior to evolve. Some of these scenarios help to explain the willingness of both New Guinea warriors and Libyan revolutionaries to fight and die for each other. Okay.